It's here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Girls Table. I am Alana. I am your host. And today we have a special guest who is my fiance, Aidan Gold, and also a venture capitalist as well. Really what happened today is I grabbed Aidan from the other room. I dragged him in here and I wanted him to come on the podcast because I've been thinking a lot about having him on because honestly, I don't want to say this to him to hype up his ego, but he is the one who motivated me to get into venture capital. I started investing in startups because of him. And I think it's really important to share his story because since I've known him, he's always talked about becoming a venture capitalist and investing in this next generation of technology that's going to change the world. And he truly is my inspiration. So, Aidan, welcome to the Girls Table. How do you feel?
It feels crazy to finally be on the show after so many episodes.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. Anne's been listening to the show for a while. We've talked about doing an episode with each other for a little bit now. So I decided, you know what better day than today? So Aidan is a GP at Hyperguap. And can you talk a little bit about Hyperguap and what it is that you do for the fund?
Yeah, so we started out as a investment syndicate and fund that came from the Hyperchange YouTube channel, which is a channel that covers technology, investing on YouTube. And we started out as a syndicate in 2021, where we invested in about 15 companies and $25 million in companies like Carta, Anduril, Public, a wide range of Lightship and electric RV. And now we are investing in an $8 million fund focused on rebuilding the American industrial base.
Super cool. And for those of you who don't know why some of those companies might sound familiar, and you've probably heard about my investing journey, is I actually started investing in startups through their syndicate. So one of the first deals they did is SpaceX and then Carta, then obviously a ton of others that Aidan just mentioned. And it was a really easy way to invest money without needing the amount that's a minimum required amount for funds. So funds sometimes require 150K, 200K, even 500K if it's a bigger fund, where AngelList syndicates sometimes have a minimum amount of 5K, or most of them even have a minimum amount of $1,000. So that was able to allow me to start investing in different startups. But Aidan, you guys invest in the American dynamism. What exactly does that mean when you think about that and mention that to people?
Yeah, so American dynamism was a phrase coined by Catherine Boyle at A16Z. And it's basically building startups that are in the country's national interests, America's national interests. So typically people might think of that as defense tech, but it's anything to do with national security. So it can be like cyber, it can be anything to do with energy. Energy is obviously very important. It can be like raw materials that are critical for like our semiconductors or our manufacturing process. If we don't have access to those raw materials, we can't build things. And this really became apparent during the pandemic when we realized that we couldn't make a lot of the core things that are required for, hospitals and masks and things like that. So that was part of the issue.
Okay, Aidan, I'm going to call you out right here, but for people that are looking at investing, what should they consider? Because you've put a lot of your net worth into risky investments, specifically startups. And obviously, like, some people want to invest, but just want to dip their toes in and they're not sure how much to put in. So what do you really think about when you've decided to put a lot of your savings into startups?
Yeah, so first thing I'd say, if you're having invested in startups and now you're thinking about it, is you should be willing to lose all your capital, because it's very high likely that the startups will go to zero, and that they're illiquid for at least 7 to 10 years, depending on which stage that you invest. The second thing is you should have like a purpose or a reason why you want to invest. So is it to learn more about different industries and it's a good way for you to get educated? Are you looking for a return that can pay for something in the future? Are you looking to sometimes people angel invest for like networking purposes? Sometimes, they're interested in a certain industry. So you just need to be clear what your intentions are. For me, like I've always believed that startups are the best possible way to create the most amount of change as fast as possible. And so they commercialize technology. They are R&D labs that the governments are not doing to develop new technology. And so, yeah, I think you just have to be like really clear in your mission. And my mission is I want to live in a world in 2050 that is like highly advanced, highly technologically savvy, where most of our diseases are cured, where we can build homes like 3D printing quickly. We have all the raw materials that we can access in really like sustainable and quick ways. We can manufacture anything. So to me, what gets me really excited is thinking about that year in 2050 and like what type of society we could live in and how do we work backwards from there to invest in startups that could support that vision.
Mm-hmm. So we get real on the girls' table, right? This is your first time on here. Super exciting moment. How many startups have you invested in?
I've probably invested in over 35 companies today, personally. Yeah.
And how much of your net worth do you think you've put into startups?
Probably around 50 to 70%, 50 to 60%.
Have you had any liquidation events to date?
Not yet.
But it's still early. Like you didn't start investing in startups.
No, it's been about two and a half years. So, I mean, I would like my guess would be start to see some liquidity in 2026, 2027, based on some of the later stage deals that we've done.
And based on your portfolio to date, what is that company that's that's the one? Like you're from the moment you put in the check until now, or maybe even they pivoted and now you're super excited about them, but that just like you hear it and you're like, that's the one.
Well, I think it would be clearly SpaceX. I mean, we invested in SpaceX in 2020. That was one of the first SPBs that we did. And it's hard to think of a company that's ever going to be able to compete with them. They just, even in their names, Space Explorations Technology Corporation, it's just feels like it's going to be a company that's going to last for like 100+ years and that no one's going to be able to like tackle that moat. And so, and then you have Elon, the best entrepreneur of all time, running it. So it's just like really hard to like ever think of a company that could compete with a company like SpaceX. But in terms of like a more earlier stage, we invest a lot early into Lightship and electric RV companies started by ex-Tesla engineers. We invested into Magrathea Metals, which is like a new age mining company, mining something that has traditionally been old school. Oh, we found a rock. Let's just like dig into it and get like the raw material. But like Magrathea is applying advanced technology where we can now get raw materials with like electricity and like dehydration techniques. And so them doing like getting essentially metal from seawater is what they're doing, which is really cool. And so really excited about that one. And then I would say if I had to say one more would be Atomic Semi. They are building semiconductors that can be basically made from the size of like a 3D printer on like a desk. And as many of you guys may know, semiconductors today are only made by like 3 companies in the whole world. And it's basically one of the most incredible arts in human history. I mean, that's how you're able to listen to this, is because there's semiconductors on a computer that are making the computer function. And yeah, there's only like 3 or 4 companies in the world that can make semiconductors. And one of them is in Taiwan, which has huge geopolitical risk. And so I think if we can find ways that we can make semiconductors in the US cheaply and efficiently, that will be a game changer. And the last thing I'll say on that is like Silicon Valley was literally started by silicon, which is like chips, and the first company in like Silicon Valley was like Intel, right? That was like what started Silicon Valley, a chip company. So
are you playing the piano over here?
You will help get that idea across.
And chips? No.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have done a ton of interesting companies. I'd say we also did SpaceX. And I think another one really exciting that you guys did a little bit before us, but Anduril is another super exciting one. Obviously, defense tech, especially in the world that we live in today, is super exciting realm.
Yeah, what's interesting about defense tech, what I will say, is Anduril is such a standout company. And for like basically the last 20 years, nobody wanted to invest in defense because it was seen as like, oh, you're supporting the US military industrial complex. Like, why would you do technology to serve them? Lots of people at like Google and Facebook and Amazon were like super anti like defense. And it was like they didn't want to do government contracts. They wouldn't even take the money because they didn't want to serve defense. Engineers were against it. And so Plummer Lucky, being the founder of creating a defense company now like 5 or 6 years ago, was like way ahead of his time, had a lot of people like be like, what are you doing? Even after he sold the company for $2 billion, which I find like super interesting. But then like nowadays, like now it's like less contrarian to be into defense. Everyone's investing in defense. There's defense VCs, there's dozens and dozens of defense companies. I'm like, how many are really going to be the next Anduril? And I think quite frankly, Anduril is a one-on-one company, and I think we'll see what happens with a lot of these other defense companies. So I've been really skeptical of this kind of like now like Me Too of defense. It kind of has reminded me of like the Me Too of SpaceX rockets. Like everyone tries to build the next rocket, but it's like you're not competing with SpaceX. And I kind of feel the same way about these other defense companies. But with that said, there's so much to be done. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if there's going to be other defense companies.
So I think you mentioned a good point. Like, obviously, both investing in startups, we hear a ton of pitches a day, and a lot of them are like, we're the next Shopify, we're the next SpaceX, we're the next, pick any big company, and then we're the next Stripe, and then just twist it a little bit. So we're seeing a lot of companies, and from an investor standpoint, then like, how do you pick the next Anduril? How do you pick, but not in terms of, hey, I just want them to be Anduril, but a better version. Like I want them to be something completely different from all these already unicorns. So as an investor, what do you look for, and what made you make how many 35 startup investments to date that really like got you to put your money to these founders?
Well, I think what's interesting is like people want to find the next SpaceX, find the next rocket company, because look how much value SpaceX has created. Next Anduril, look how much value Anduril has created. But the truth is, like, I think your thinking is like already flawed. I'm trying to find like another one, because like it's like Peter Thiel said, like the next Mark Zuckerberg's not going to start Facebook, you know, so you can't be looking for another defense company that because you saw Anduril be so successful. You can't be looking for another rocket because like you kind of already missed the boat. And so what are going to be the other massive sectors that are going to like really matter in the world? And how can you find like that end of one company that's going to be the one that really matters? And I think like you need to be looking at things like, you know, that are critical for civilization. You know, we talked about space, we talked about defense, but like a lot of what comes to my mind is like things like batteries, things like energy, transportation, you know, and all these have like lots of subsectors that you can really like try to find the dominant company in those. Raw materials, like I said earlier, mining. So manufacturing and like the different subsectors, but it's like really hard to find like that new sector before it's obvious, you know, like what's the company, like what's the sector now that's going to be like, oh, it's the SpaceX for space or Anduril for defense. Like it's unclear what that next sector is going to be like. Oh, it's like, of course there should have been like a $10 billion new company that made it way better, you know? And I think like a good example too is like GovTech. And it's kind of in line with Anduril and SpaceX, which are both kind of serving the government contracts. But like, you know, government software to help with your voting, your tax ID. Like, why isn't there like my government ID app? You know, that's like super sophisticated and sleek, and they sell it at the government's their biggest customer, and it's just like they make great software that's for consumers to vote, to do everything.
They do have the Passport ID app right now, where like really you have your digital passport in the US. So instead of waiting in the long line, there's a little bit shorter if you downloaded the Passport app. But
yeah, so things like that I think are really exciting.
Yeah, no, I think that's super exciting. So for the people listening today, like now you might be like, do I want to put my money there? You guys are both investing in startups. The liquidation events aren't there. But I personally feel like there's so much potential. Like the reason why we're both investing isn't to go ahead and invest in the 9 out of 10 startups that are going to fail. It's to invest that in that one company that's really going to stand out from the rest. It's really going to make a ton of liquidity, hopefully be able to buy a house one day and really just be able to succeed. So are there any specific metrics people should be looking at if they're looking at different syndicates and their deal flow, or if they're GP looking at looking at a startup?
Yeah, I mean, every company we talk about a lot is a Pokemon. So it's hard to say that like, like one specific metric to rule them all. Like it's really hard to think like that. But I will say, like, you just sometimes need to know like the very basics, which is like what's the product and is it good? You know, like what's your revenue? Like how much are they burning? Like just like capital efficiency, and like how much is it taking you to get to that like capital to build what product that you're building? Like just super simple things. I think there's a lot of ways that like people try to overcomplicate a lot of this, and I think there's a lot to be said about that. But it's like, is the product like truly revolutionary? And is the company like really capital efficient at building things and generating revenue? And has like a line of sight to being like a really big company.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. So do you regret at all investing in 35 companies, or you're just so excited about your portfolio and the optionality?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I think if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't make a lot of the decisions that I made investing, to be frank. But with that said, like, I don't know what the outcomes are going to be for a lot of those. And I think you need to make a lot of investments to like get better. And I think just like a startup founder, you have to make a lot of mistakes to find product market fit and grow your company. It's the same thing for investors. You have to take a lot of shots on goal, but eventually you find like some really good ones. And the key is to just stick in the game long enough and be patient and wait for the kind of, your shot to really swing big. And I think we have some really good opportunities in the pipeline, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they grow over the years.
Okay, so I want to end it with, guys, Aidan does a sitcom with his co-founder and other GP of his fund, Gally. And what they do, it is called TBC Bros. And basically they're making a show about two guys in VC, and they're absolutely crushing it. They just finished recording their first season. They're really just trying to help grow it and raise awareness, but taking a different approach. Where me personally, I like the podcast game. I like talking to you guys, like helping you learn, but it gives you a different lens into the VC life, but as a joke and take it as a parody. But Aidan, did I miss anything about this? Is there anything you want the viewers to really know when they watch TBC Bros and watch you and Gally just kick it?
Well, I think there's like tons of Substacks and articles and podcasts about venture capital and startups that you can listen to or read and learn a lot. But I think there's not that many like entertainment ways to like learn about, like, quote unquote, learn about VC, but also just like be exposed and feel like you're in the VC game a little bit. And so we just wanted to create something that was like a bit more like fun. And like over like dramatizing like the VC and startup experience that like no one was doing. And so there's plenty of other podcasts if you want to go and learn about VC and like startups and stuff like that. This is more
the girls table.
The girls table has been a great one, right? But this is more focused on like, we want to entertain you, we want it to be funny, we want it to be interesting, and it's also a way to tell our story and tell the story of the companies that we invest in. And not like a very like, oh, this is the company, this is what they do, la, la, la. It's like a fun way to kind of talk about the company that you might not even realize is marketing. Like if you check out episode 2, we highlighted startup, but you might not even realize that. So
I was also an extra in what number episode?
Episode 4. And
it hasn't come out yet. But guys, I've been working really hard on it. So if you're looking for another view of VC, I'm their biggest fan too. So highly recommend you check it out. And I've seen the work that they put in. But Aidan, thank you so much for coming on the Girls Table today. He will be back, guys, mainly because he's my fiance. And this is just the beginning for us because it was super fun to have him on. And we're both investing, but we have different theses in the space. He's obviously American dynamism. I'm more crypto Web3, but also generalist. So just excited to have him on. And he was, as I mentioned, also one who got me into investing in the first place because he's always wanted to change the world with investing and really just funding the next generation of entrepreneurs. So if you guys have any questions or comments for Aidan, like, comment, subscribe in the comment section, and we will be back. Thank you guys.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Peace out.